Go.
This is it, Rob. This is the first edition of the Edge.
This is awesome. I'm very
I
excited
know.
to be doing this. We're
It's going
talking
to be
about
fun.
it, finally making it rain.
I know, right? So the idea behind this was just to do a podcast for intraday traders. Like most podcasts are based on macro views and long-term views, and you don't really hear a lot of podcasts based around day traders, and that's what we are. I mean, we look at the high time frame, but we're generally flat going into the close, and so
Yeah.
it's very rare that you hear guys like us who are in and out of the market 5-10 times a day chop it up. So here we
Right.
are.
That's great.
Absolutely. So I guess let's kick it off, man. I'm curious, what got you into trading?
Oh yeah, super strange actually, because I was living in Seattle and then got divorced, and my
Didn't
wife
we
moved
all?
back to where she was from. Ex-wife moved back to where she was from in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I came down here to be around my kids and wanted to spend lots of time around my kids, and really couldn't find any compelling jobs here in New Mexico, surprisingly. And so had a couple friends back in Washington who did fairly well trading, mostly equities. And so I started going down the rabbit hole
Okay.
of starting with options, looking at equities, looking at different strategies and systematic trading, trying to code stuff up. I'm like, oh, this looks hard. Maybe I'll just code something up and walk away. Wouldn't that be awesome? It'll be my own
Hey,
little ATM
we,
machine. And that
we've
didn't
all
work
been
out,
there. We've
shockingly.
all, yeah, exactly.
And so I really got into futures because of the access, the ability to have leverage, and tax implications were far better than with equities when you're doing short time frame horizons.
That's how I know
And
you're profitable, Rob.
because we're
You
trying to
actually
look at
care.
the
You actually care about tax implications.
and so yeah, futures really became what I was looking at. I still look at systematic trading. I had to look at it from like a longer time frame, because in small time frame, systematic trading can be super noisy. So a lot of people
Okay.
look at daily bars and things like that for systematic trading, which kind of goes against my day trading. I want to be out by 4. So
Right.
that makes it so
Hey,
I have
Globex
to.
is rough. Holding through Globex is tough.
You
It's
don't know what's going to happen.
right.
Like you don't know if in the middle of the night,
I
we're going
don't
to have a
sleep
Fed
well.
speaker
Yeah.
decide to go rogue. And so, yeah, that's how I got into it. And I've tried a few different methodologies and finally feel like I'm in my happy, comfy place where everything kind of like works and resonates and makes
That's
sense.
what's up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've really enjoyed. You and I, our relationship is, I don't want to say brand new, but it's fairly new. It's within the past 2-3 years we've started to work together, and
Yeah.
I couldn't be happier. I mean, you're an amazing trading partner, but it's interesting to me because not to toot your horn or talk you up, but your resume is a mile long, dude. For those of you guys who
Yeah.
don't know, like I'm gonna put some stuff out there. Rob probably wouldn't tell you. Like I worked on the freaking Star Wars program, like laser beams for fucking NASA and shit.
Yeah.
So right, I mean, it's super impressive. And then here you are with me, the DGen, trading every day.
That's
So
awesome. No, it's
it's quite the step.
it's funny
Quite the step
because
sideways.
the market is one of those places where you feel at the center of everything going on in the world. You know exactly what's going on with world events
It
and
feels that way, right?
right. Like this is the
Yeah.
epicenter of where fortunes are made
Yeah,
and
you get
lost,
your
and
finger on the heartbeat or the pulse of the world.
you really feel like you're connected. Like I could
Yeah,
be working in a lab in the middle of New Mexico, buried in a bunker, with 5 feet of concrete all around me, and that's you do have some reward from just knowing you're working on something big and important, but there's also just something about every day you're coming into the market where
yeah.
you just don't know what's going to happen. So it's every day's new.
Well, and I have to agree with that. Like for me, I have terrible ADD, which and so I get bored really fast, or I get sidetracked, and that's a normal job, like a mundane job where you come in and here's your tasks and you do this and that, and for me that I've never made a great employee. I make a great boss, but I've never made a great employee, and I think that's one thing about trading for me that's always kind of stuck out was the fact that I mean, not only do we make our own schedule, but really the idea that every day is different, right? So,
Oh yeah.
we have a system that we trade in a process, and that is the same, but never are 2 days exactly the same in the market, which is one thing
Yeah.
that I absolutely love, is that every day is a new adventure.
Yeah.
And some days are fantastic and some days aren't, but at least every day is something new, and
Every
it's
day is something new. There's
yeah, and it's
never,
fun,
yeah.
right? Yeah,
It's
I,
not
I
like
like
you're going in and peeling potatoes every day. Like
yeah,
this,
exactly.
something is new every time,
Yeah.
and days that you think might be a little dead, if there's even a minor news catalyst, it can send the market going in a direction
Oh, you mean
more
like
of
Thursday?
volatility. Yeah, like
Like
Thursday
Thursday,
would be a great
yeah,
example of
yeah,
that.
yeah. You mean where we were like so slow, I was trying to keep my eyes open, and then the next thing you know, we're down 90 points? Yeah.
It was nuts. It was crazy.
Yeah, that was pretty wild.
That was a
So
crazy day.
that was crazy. But I will, like, just to kind of, go back there. I mean, that is one of the beautiful parts about this job, is that, every day is an adventure. And that's certainly one of the draws for me. I mean, you know, one of the things that I like most about it. So
How did you get into trading? Because I know that you've been at it as a professional longer than I have, and I know you've worked for some big places. So
I
how did
have.
you find your way into there?
Well, again, it was kind of by accident. So, I'm a bit of a degen to begin with, right? And I feel like that's kind of, trading. You have to be a special individual to do this for a living. There's no question about it. Like, you don't find the normal 9 to 5 guys doing this. Like, you got to have a
Right.
little screw loose, and that's kind of me. Yeah, as you know. So, I started trading. My mom got me into investing, and I say investing, when I was young. So, she had a change jar, and when the change jar got full, we used to take it and to Kroger's or the bank or whatever, and there'd be $500 in there, and she'd say, okay, whatever you put in, I'll double it, right? So I would have $500 as
She
a
was your own 401k. That was
He
good.
was, right? So as a 10-year-old boy or whatever, I'd have $500, and I need video games. I can't spend it all, right? So I gotta have video games at 10 years old. So I would keep half, and I would invest half, and and she would match it. And before I knew it, when I was 16, I don't remember when we started, but before we knew it, I had enough money for a car. And so that was how I got my first vehicle. And that was when I realized, I was like, holy shit, this is an
I can
amazing
do
way.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for real, right? So I always kind of had this inkling from the beginning of, that's the kind of direction I wanted to go. So my schooling, however, I didn't realize that finance was my jam. Like, I had no idea that
Yeah.
trading, finance, and hedge fund world. I didn't even know. Like, my parents were salespeople. My father owned a truck sales, my mother owned a jewelry sales, and they were grinders. Like, we didn't have any money growing up. They're self-employed. You know how hard it is to be
Oh
self-employed,
yeah.
right? So, I watched this sales ordeal, and it led me into a direction of business. So I went to school for business, and when I got out, I basically kind of got into sales, and I ran into a guy who got me into the mortgage brokerage business, and we made a ton of money. I mean, it was like 2005,
Oh,
six,
it's just
seven,
perfect. You
eight.
got the perfect
Oh,
timing.
I caught it, right? I caught the wave, right? So, but it was so amazing that I was like, oh, what am I going to do with some of that extra money? So when I was young, I was like 22,
Wow.
23, 24. And so I was kind of tinkering with Apple stock. And at the time it was $700. And
Oh
even though I
yeah.
had like 150 grand in my trading account, dude, Apple at $700, you couldn't get anywhere. Like, that was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what? Like 1,000 shares is, $70,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You couldn't.
So anyway, I kind of taught myself to do options and whatever. But then the financial crisis came. And the mortgage business was essentially, it imploded. And so I was looking for a career change, and I had been kind of teaching myself how to trade in the time being anyway, because I just had this passion for it. I'm not, I like to say I'm not a gambler, because I don't go to the
Yeah.
road or anything, but there was something attractive, the adrenaline of the trading. So, it sucked me in. And really, about 20 in my early 20s, I started trading, and I don't want to call it full time, because in my opinion, when I say full time, that means you're not doing anything else
Right.
but trading for an income. So, when the collapse of the real estate market came, I was teaching myself essentially to trade, quote unquote, you know I wouldn't say full time, but I was starting to become, a process. And that's, when I fell into the market making aspect with some guys, because I had, I had earned some knowledge at that point.
Yeah.
And I was determined, you know how I am. I fucking stare at these charts for
Listen.
hours when I'm, it's silly. I'm kind of like, I don't know, smart, dumb dude. Anyway.
No, I know the feeling. Like if you would have told me 7 or 8 years ago that I would spend, like if you would said day trading, I would have said absolutely not, because it's one
Yeah.
way too, the probability of being successful is way too low. And then sitting in front of my computer for 8+ hours a day does not, doesn't sound like
It
a
doesn't.
great work environment. And as time went on, you get into these charts and you start seeing the
Dude, they
potential, and you
suck
got
you in.
see and all of a sudden it's like a video game, and you've lost 10,000 hours just like
Right.
focused into it. And so it wasn't something I was going to be, like out of the gates, this is exactly what I want to do. But once you start getting into it, you see how the different wheels move and the different connections and correlations and potential and ability to make, generational wealth. Like
Sure.
you got to be a part of it. Basically,
Yeah.
you just fall into it.
Well, it's interesting that you said one thing that as you know, I have two sons. I have a 21-year-old and I have a soon to be 16-year-old, and they are obsessed with video games. And I'll admit that, I played duty in video games. Like I was first generation Nintendo era, right?
Oh,
Like,
okay, yeah.
like I was in it, right? ColecoVision, Commodore computers, like the whole nine. And so it's not a surprise that my kids are into it, because as they grew up with an iPad and yada yada. So
Yeah.
I've tried to like use this as a bridge, because I want my sons to get into this. I mean, there's no reason to not have the skill, right? Whether you do it for a living or not, trading's a skill, right? It's something that you can fall back on if
Yeah.
you need to. And I've tried to like use that comparison, which you said so many times, like especially for my oldest boy. I keep telling him, like, dude, this is adult video games. Like the idea is to score the highest amount of points possible.
Exactly.
Every
And by the
single
way, you've actually got unlike other jobs, you actually have points on the board that you can say, "Hey, look,
yeah. So it's you made a perfect and I try to like reinforce that concept all the time. But it's adult video games. There's no question about it. So Rob, while you're checking out what's going on in the market, I gotta tell you something. So I don't know if you know this or not, but I am. It's funny because I just said I'm not a gambler, right? But yet I trade for a living. I don't go to the casino. I don't go to the boat. But dude, I love playing the lottery. Okay, so I play the Powerball in the Mega Millions.
some person from Oregon won it."
You say what?
Somebody from Oregon won like 1.3 billion.
I am so listen. That's where this is going. I'm so frustrated, right? So, so I mean, I play a lot, dude. I when I told my wife what I spend on this shit, she was not happy, right? So she was basically like, "We got fucking two mortgages to pay, and you're spending $500 a week on the lottery, right?" So
Yeah.
she was super pissed. So, anyways, I have to tone that down. But what I was getting at is the fact that this. So I'm in Chicago, and Illinois has the Illinois Lottery app where you can play all the Powerball and all this stuff. And every morning, or not, let me rephrase that. So whenever they have a draw, if you win, whether it's $8 or $1 billion, they send you an email that says, "Congratulations, you've won." Right?
Oh gosh.
So I have been like really like focusing my chi and believing, like, I'm trying to manifest this $1 billion, right? I'm like, I know it's coming. I got my legs crossed. I'm damn near floating, right? Because I'm like thinking so hard trying to manifest this shit. And so I just knew, like, I told my girl, I was like, no, like nobody's won. I keep playing. Last night I actually spent like more than I probably should have on tickets, because I'm like, this is it. I've got a great feeling. Like this is gonna be right. And maybe I was too high. I don't know. That's probably the case too. But regardless, I woke up this morning to the email, "Congratulations, you won." And I'm like, fuck yes.
Oh my gosh.
But I didn't want to get too overly excited, because I'm like, okay, maybe it's just $8. And lo and behold, I won $21 fucking dollars. And so I did all that like serious Buddha meditation, like manifestation, all this shit. I'm like, who do I have to pray to make this work?
Came back for the whopping, oh my gosh. That's
So
hilarious.
I got nowhere near my investment back, but at least I got something. But man, I got to tell you, it's one of those gut wrenching feelings because you're like, dude, I've had this happen the very first time I had the app. Sorry, I was crying right there. The very first time I had the app, I bought it and I went to bed and I woke up and I had an email that said you won. And like I literally woke my wife. I'm like, babe, we won the lottery,
We
right? I
won the
jumped out of
lottery.
bed and I look and it was $8 fucking, right? So I didn't get too overly excited when I saw the thing this morning, but and then I saw some dude in Oregon. I'm like, what a jerk! Like,
Sure. I bet
man,
he's a horrible person.
the guy's probably strung out on heroin.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well, they
no
just
offense to you
yeah,
people in
exactly.
Oregon who are all strung out on
I'm
heroin.
from there originally, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally get it. Oh my god. Yeah, yeah. Oh man. When I saw it was from Oregon, I quickly looked and to see like where they were from in Oregon, just out
Mhm.
of curiosity as a guy who grew up there. And they didn't say on the news or CNN where he was from, and I was or she. I was just super curious, but yeah,
Right.
at 1.3
It was a
billion.
lot.
It
And
was a lot.
I told myself if I don't win this time, like I have really
You have to
like
back off.
I have to stop. Yeah. Like I could be making my own lottery with the amount of money that I spend on the lottery. Like if I was just buying $500 a week worth of Bitcoin or something, you know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's like
you're doing great.
something. Like right now I'm just pissing it away. So it's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. So, anyway, sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
Okay. Yeah, let
So
me
I probably distracted you pretty good right there. But
I was trying to share hold on, I'm trying to share my screen.
yeah, let's see it. You got to talk about
Oh,
some
I
trade.
see what I had to do. It was window. I will share that one. You
There
see
we
that?
go. Whoop. Let's see what we got here.
So I start a lot of analysis with
I'm gonna hide
TPO
this.
charts. And if you're unfamiliar with TPO charts, um, time price opportunity charts, each series of letters is 30 minutes long, and you can actually put the letters in their own block. So each one of these is like a 30-minute candle. And then what
Right.
you do is you collapse these thing down like Tetris. They all fall down to the left side instead of falling down. And that gives you this distribution. So you can kind of get, it's a nice way of looking at the distribution of where price was over time. And I like it in conjunction with volume profile. I get a little bit out of each one. So I like to have both on my chart. So the mirror image of that is actually where volume was. So you can see like the TPO where it spent the most time is just above where the most volume traded. So they're pretty comparable. And then these blue and red things are bars are just how many sellers got absorbed or buyers got absorbed with those according colors. And
Yes.
so we started out on Monday. We had some ISM manufacturing news, which then set us down, and we kind of settled above this value area here. And so I was looking for more up, of course, which then I'm completely wrong for the next day, and we come down Tuesday and we literally have a gap. And I love these things. I love gaps because most of the time
They get filled.
we
Yeah.
start going up and we try to fill this area because that's where the auction is least efficient. So we got to go. It it's I always think of it as like painting a room, and you have upstrokes and downstrokes. And if you take the paintbrush off the wall and start painting down, well, you want to go back up again and like paint over
Yeah.
that area and make
That's
sure it's all
actually a great
cleaned
way to
up.
put it. Yeah.
And so I usually look for longs on this day, and we went, we really bounced further down than I expected, and then started to rally during like M and N period to come back up, which then gave us some single prints, which are
And just
also
to clarify,
inefficient.
M and N period are like the last
The
out of the
last two periods
right.
of the day, and
Okay.
then that followed up with Wednesday, where we were able to clean up these single prints, which was that first inefficiency, and then almost get back up here and close this gap. Now, here's
This is
what
where
was
they pulled the okey doke on you.
exactly, and this
Right.
was really like I was frustrated with this day because you can see that we had what we call a
Can you zoom in a little bit for us? Just
um
drag your screen a little bit so it gets just a little bigger. Perfect. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
see if I can do it like this too. And
Yeah,
so
there you
we
go.
had this sort of incomplete auction or poor high where you have two periods that overlap. And usually that means, hey, this thing could even go up a little bit
A little
more,
higher.
a
Right, yeah.
little higher. And oftentimes when it's the same, when it's um, back to back 30 minutes. So D, E, those are right next to each other. That sort of poor high isn't as strong as a poor high that's like a C and G period where it's for
Right.
sure probably going to get taken out. So I knew it was a little iffy, but there was so much buying. But look at all these buyers getting absorbed here. So we
I
still
see
didn't
that.
close the gap. We missed it by like a point or something ridiculous.
Yeah. They
And
actually sold
then,
off pretty good if I remember right. Like they
yeah.
up there.
And
Yeah.
then, of course, I wake up the next day again, every day is different. And lo and behold, we have another gap, but this one's to the downside. So we had this poor high that we could never clear. And then overnight, they ran it up.
Right.
And so I was
And they
expecting
opened
maybe
way
to
higher.
come. Yeah,
They
I
opened
would
way
expect
higher.
maybe it would come down here and tag this and then resume going and try to
Bro,
make
you were
it.
short all the way into there from into 81. I remember you saying I'm
Yeah,
trying to get down to 81. I'm like, damn, this dude's he's got
he's insane. Yeah,
it.
what is he trying
Right.
to do? I just thought we'd close the gap and then go. And then lo and behold, we had yet another, a couple Fed speakers decided to say things like, "Hey, we don't think we're going to cut rates, two or three times this year, as much as the market likes to think so." And that sent us on this, 100 point
Dude,
poop,
that was the
just
craziest looking.
crazy drop, just zing.
And just for
And
full
of course,
disclosure,
I got out right here for everyone. This is
yeah,
mine. Like once we closed the gap, I'm like, okay, this mission accomplished on my move. And no,
bro.
uh,
Like full disclosure, I'm not perfect. I was buying many times on the way down.
on the way down. Well, look
Dude,
at all this buying in here. This
I
was
got my
all
head peeled back that day, like Indian scalpage. Look at this. I used to have hair before that
exactly.
day.
This is what caused it. And
Right.
then once you get into these sort of like value areas, you expect them at least to bite in a little bit, and it
Some,
just
yeah,
sunk it. And then overnight we started to push in here, and then evidently on Friday everyone forgot about all this bad news that happened 12 hours before, and did a 50% retrace all the way
right.
back up. And so we're
What's
kind of back
interesting,
in this.
I think there was NFP that happened the
Yes,
next day at the lows, which gave us some
gave us a
interesting job numbers that, first off, you and I, and when you met me, one of the very first things I told you, I don't give a shit about the news. I do not care. Right. I
yeah.
don't care about what the numbers are. I do not care. All I care about is what time is it taking place so that I can be ready for the jolt. I mean, in my opinion, the chart always tells us what
What's
we're
going
going to
on?
do. The move is already premeditated. It's just, you know what I mean? The news is the fuel. And so it was kind of interesting how this whole thing played out, right? You had the Fed news pushed us down, which when it's, I'll show you kind of from my candlestick perspective,
Hmm.
interesting place where we got smoked at the highs, and then also an interesting place where they bought at the lows. So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's just interesting how it's all like you're saying. It's all kind of, oh, I guess we forgot what happened here.
No, and this was also one of my great frustrations as a day trader. Like down here, this sort of 91, 92 level, this is kind of where I was expecting Thursday to end. But of course, no, it popped just before that. And like a good day trader, it happened in the evening session and then took off. So so I missed my push up.
Right.
I got in. I did get in up here, but honestly, I was really stalking down in here pretty tight, and it
Well,
happened in the
you
middle of
should
the night.
tell people why you were looking down in there, which is interesting
Oh,
because it actually played perfect, but it played while we were sleeping.
while we were sleeping, and which is it happens.
Pretty common.
See if I can get
Pull it
there.
over without. Yeah, there you go.
So on the TPO, if this doesn't happen frequently, maybe once a month or so, we'll get a day that has no overlapping value with the day before it or the day after it. And so you can see here's our value area. This is basically where 70% of all um, the price action took place the day before, and then this day on this Friday, and then back here on this Monday. So all these guys are kind of like trapped down here. And prices never came down and to revisit that area. So I tend to mark these on my chart as island days, and oftentimes they'll come down here and play like the value area high and go,
Yeah.
or the value area low and then continue down. So they act as pretty strong bumpers.
I'm with you though
And
on that value area high on that first touch. That's usually, and it
it's
usually lines up
really,
pretty
you
good with
usually get something out of it.
yeah.
And so that's really what I was kind of stalking down here. And it played in the overnight session to
Yeah, you can see
bounce.
that the blue candle there on the Globex. It actually touched exactly where you want it.
So yeah, that was a bit of a miss on my part because I wasn't up. I mean, I was up, but I wasn't, actively trading it at that moment in time because I typically wait for the opener.
Listen, I'm not even going to bullshit you. My ass was so sore from Thursday.
And
I didn't even trade Friday, and I saw it coming, and
you saw it
I
go.
just couldn't do it. I was just like, you know what? It's okay to take a day off, Ryan. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, it's
You
fine. And I
know,
think we all, especially, what's so fascinating about like day trading, like it's so easy. Like I could get my daughter in here to go push a button to go long or short, and she could make a ton of money, like just with one button click. But at the
right?
same time, there's no process there that you can replicate and have it go um, repeatable and something you can do day in and day out. And it is mentally tough when you have like big areas that you're looking for or things that would typically cause the market to turn,
Right.
and those don't come to fruition. Yeah, and it's mentally and emotionally exhausting. And keeping your risk in check is the most important thing, so you can live to trade
Another day.
another day.
That's true. Yeah, it gets a little, that is probably the biggest part of trading, but day trading, and I'll just say trading period is being able to control your risk management. I mean,
Yeah,
you and I both have been trading a long time. I mean, I've got 10 years in professionally, which is everyday trading for a living. I don't know. What do you got? Probably close to that.
yeah, like 6 or 8. Yeah,
Okay. I mean, and you and I both know, I mean, we've taken, over the
take things.
years, we've had plenty of down days, but really what kind of keeps us in the car is just risk management. I mean, it's really
Yeah,
comes down to that. It's funny because just to kind of give you just to tie into this, I think I told you this yesterday. I had such a bad day Thursday, and really, it really wasn't that bad. It was more of my execution than anything. I was a little disappointed
hmm,
that I decided to step in front of this thing. And so, and so I told, I had a bad day and I was feeling all emotionally butthurt. And my girl's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I lost it all." She's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, it's all gone. I blew out. It's all gone. She's like, "Shut up." And I'm like, "I'm serious. It's all gone." She's like, "First off," she's like, "I know you don't trade. Like your risk is too good for that." And I'm
exactly.
like,
You
"Okay,
never
well, it
do
just
that.
feels like it's gone, right? Like, it could have been gone.
It
Like
should have
if
been
I would have
gone.
been an ass clown, this could have been a very devastating day."
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So yeah, anyways, it's just funny though. But yeah, like you said, I mean, risk management is certainly like
yeah.
key.
It's huge. It's huge.
It's everything, in my opinion. I mean, it really is. I mean, because, and you know this. I mean, I trade well, right? But I'm
Hmm.
not like the best trader. I'm not. I mean, I'm a good trader, but I'm not like I'm not the Jesus of trading by any means. Like the only reason that I'm still in this game is because I cut losses quick.
Yeah,
Like
you have
yeah,
to be a good loser.
I'm a great risk manager. That's about like I'm a mediocre trader and a great risk manager, but that together equals a career. So for people who don't realize that, like you don't need to be a phenomenal trader to make money. You need to be a fantastic risk manager. I mean, I mean, I know you and I are kind of. I see you all the time. You're like, I had to cut that, and you're like, it went, so I got back in it. I do the same thing. It's like I'm not
Hmm.
going to risk it. If it starts to go again, I can hit the button again. I don't need to
Right.
hold it. You know.
You don't need to hold it for
No, no.
rely on hopium to get you back in.
Yeah, that's the
It
whole
does
thing.
suck though when it goes against you, you get stopped out, and then it starts to go your direction. You get back in, you get in at a worse spot than you got in
It's
the first time. I think
it's
that's
true.
the where I really get mad at my execution.
Well, you know that I have this weird talent of being able to be top ticked.
You
I'm like,
do.
right? It's like some strange fucking
And when you
talent.
mean
So
top tick, you don't just mean, I was a point from the high when it took me out. No, no, you meant the exact price level it
I
got me
have
to
no
move.
idea how this happens. I really don't. And so what I started doing, and I don't know if I told you this or not, but let's just say I have 10 cars on. And for those of you who know what it's an old school terminology for contracts, right? So if I have 10 cars on, I break up my stops. I stagger them. I stop out a half at this level, and then maybe like I have my oh shit stop like 5 points higher, and that's where I
Mhm.
have the remainder of my orders. And I can't tell you how happy I am that I've started to do that, because I can always just put that 5 back on, but I'm still in the trade in case I get top ticked and it goes. So yeah,
Right.
it's an amazing ability I have. I don't know.
It's it's a gift.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
It's a gift for the market makers. That's for damn sure. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So do you mind, like, so you've kind of laid this all out on a profile perspective,
Mhm.
and do you mind if I show my
Yeah,
charts?
no, go ahead.
So I'm going to kind of keep it like high time frame, as you know. It's kind of what I like here. Um, and let's just talk about, some of this other stuff here. So let me
One thing
share.
I will say to people is we do trade off of fairly small time frame charts, but we always look at the higher time frame to give us directionality and market
Absolutely.
structure to lean on, because there's always times where you can see and flit in and out like with a scalp from random places, but the best trades, the ones with the highest probability of success, the ones that are going to run the furthest, always come from some sort of level of structure. I've never had something just random. Or if it appears to be random, it probably means I've overlooked something in my prep, honestly.
Right. Right.
And everything should come off of, some sort of, I believe everything should come off of some sort of structure.
For sure. I mean, there's a reason why things are getting the reactions that they're getting. And again, I know a lot of people who are watching this, may or may not understand, our trading style, which is fine, because after we kind of explain a few things, that I think it'll all come together. And essentially we look at high time frame support and resistance, and we're also I'm personally a value trader.
Hmm.
I'm always looking to see if we're overextended inside or outside of value. I feel like that has a big part of, when we're looking for retracements or pullbacks. And so, or even the other way, right? So let me figure out how to get this on top real fast, and I'll share. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to share my ETH weekly and daily chart here. Let me see if I can turn this on.
I think I can stop
Turn
there.
you off. There you go. I got you. Don't worry. So this is, let me get my pen out. And this is kind of for those of you who we were just talking about this, these with Rob had the profile out. This right here is the weekly time frame. And for us, we look at high time frame support lost or support gain to kind of help identify where we're going to continue our move, right? It's the easiest way for me to say it. Okay. So we've been trending up, as everyone knows, for freaking ever, right? So we finally had a little bit of weakness here last week, where they've popped an all-time high in Globex, and we had an all-time high in SPX, but the actual cash session kind of failed to make that all-time high in ES. And so when we dipped down here, and this is where you were talking about how you actually expected it to go higher and they didn't, right? We came down and we played this 36.50, which was huge daily structure support. Well, when they made this move down, we have a daily support here and a weekly support that you could see is derivative from 0850. This was when we popped up here, and people were saying, oh, it's a dead cat bounce and this and that and the other, which was quasi true from this 36.50. We came right up and we played this area here. And then this is, I think, where you said we had that Fed speak, right? Isn't this
Hmm.
what you're saying? Like,
Exactly.
yeah. And they were saying that, we're not going to raise rates, or we're not going to lower rates, and yada, yada, yada. And then the market just straight up puked, right? But what
Yeah.
was wild is it played this weekly on the daily time frame. So as you can see, this weekly level was derived from the weekly time frame, and this is the daily, and they popped right up. They played it perfect, and we got smoked, right?
Right.
And again, I expected something. It didn't give us anything anywhere. It just came right down. But what was interesting is we finally came down to some weekly support at 51.95.50, and then that's where we kind of held this right here, and then into the NFP we rallied back up. And I guess it's funny because you and I, like we said earlier, I don't really give a shit about the news. I only care about the chart, and I only care about like what time is the news going to take place.
Right.
Later on, after the fact, you and I will look at the numbers and kind of discuss it just from a general conversation perspective. And it's clearly something I want to go over with you, but I kind of wanted to go into this chart structure so that people could see, like, what we were looking at, what we were, kind of anticipating for this to happen, which was the short. And we were always looking at this, 95, '05 area. I mean, as you know, I was kind of hunting this '05.
Yeah, '05 was the big one.
Dude, I was on '05 for a long ass time. So this is a RTH daily chart. This was the '05 that I was after. And again, you could see on the daily chart, they came up and they played this '0950, '0850, whatever it was. And you could see the all-time high was created this is in ETA, I'm sorry, RTH. And then they came down and they just let it have it. So long story short, they held this leg. This was our leg up. And it was interesting because, you could see it on the ETH chart that we had this weekly here. But it's just interesting the way they did this. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I think it was worth pointing out on how it lined up with your TPO charts. And I'll bring over this 4-hour just so, a lot of people have a hard time digesting the daily time frame because it doesn't have all the smaller ins and outs of it. But here's essentially what we're talking about, Rob. So here was this pop off of this 4136 area.
Mm-hmm.
They held it, right? They came all the way up here and they played this weekly support that was lost, and we just got nailed, right? Made new lows. Then here's where they held the jobs number, right? But we had talked about how this was truly the leg up, right? So as long as they hold this,
then we could still go.
Yeah, and they popped. They did it. They popped, and they're right. And the thing is now we're in a pretty critical area because this is a daily, support or resistance. And for me, I'm going to use this week as a guide. For me, it'll be 71 and really this 36.
36 is a good one too. Yeah,
dude, it's over with. You know what I mean? If 36 gets hit, I mean, we could come all the way down to this 51.33. But I really truly believe if they hold this leg, we do have an opportunity to come up here and make new highs. And we've got a huge bullish and weekly imbalance up here. So it's going to be a kind of a tricky week, I think. I think it could be. And, I really believe that if we pop up here and 93 fails, I think this thing can come all the way down again. So, but really it's all about right now we're holding the leg. And so I'm just sitting here like, I mean, really, they could go more up. We're kind of in a funky spot. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, we're in between those kind of zones, right? Like we're in between. Yeah, we've had the support. We know it worked. It took us up, but now we're just below resistance, and so it's
right.
Like, we banged our head on that. Now, we'll probably come down a little bit, maybe play another level. But I'm still bullish,
Me
just
too.
because we haven't taken out that other low yet.
Yeah, we've got this. And for those of you guys who may follow us on Twitter or whatever, this is something that you can ride in blood. I guarantee it. And there's no time frame in which they have to correct this. But I will say this: an all-time high made in Globex will not stand. The cash boys will always come and fix the all-time high in the cash session. So this has me leaning to the upside, right? Now it doesn't mean that we can't come to 33 and then go back up, but I'm clearly still looking up because we this needs to be corrected, right? Like it's almost like poor structure.
No, you're absolutely right. That whole, like, if we test an all-time high during the Globex session, or otherwise people call it ETH session, the RTH always, it's got more weight behind it. It's got more money behind it. It will.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's always taking it out. So
yeah, always.
So it'll happen sometime. And you look at that profile, you're right. Look how ugly that.
Dude,
that is a redheaded stepchild of
absolutely
profiles at the top.
So this leads me to believe. I mean, you just explained to the people on the daily time frame, how these inefficiencies get cleaned up and what have you. And if this isn't, screaming at me, I don't know what is. So, does it have to come do all this now? Absolutely not. I mean, we could pull back first, and we don't know how it's going to get fixed. We just know at some point that this is, screaming at us. So
yeah,
I thought it was interesting to kind of point out, and just as something to pay attention to per se. So let's see here. Oh, so let's actually talk about this. So now we've kind of gone over the charts, right? And we've talked about how we both kind of shit the bed on this short up here. I mean, you did best out of all of us. I mean, you got 25 points out of the 100.
Yeah, yeah. I got a quarter of it. Great. Good job.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, this was, let's be honest. It was, I mean, if I would have been really paying attention, this would have been my target anyway, because that was, new lows. And, but I mean,
Because we'd held it though, I was like, oh, all I want to do is just
get out.
get out and touch that, and I was in it for a long time and sat in
I
through a
dude,
bunch of
it was
moves.
so slow. I
It was
mean,
so slow.
it was painfully slow, and it was crazy because it was the past 2 days, and I kind of like to say, I was thinking about it yesterday when I was talking to you. It's almost like the calm before the storm, right? But
Hmm.
it truly was like absolutely painfully slow. Let's go over here to the 15-minute. Um, I mean, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I mean, you had really 2 hours before of a short before this thing actually went. I mean,
Started to roll.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, for those of you guys who are really trading, you know that that's a long time to hold a trade before you even get to your target, right? Like, yeah, it
Well, you
was
also like to see the momentum and energy going in the direction you've placed your trade. And when you
right
put it on and it just sort of does nothing, you're like, well, great. I'm this is the wrong place for me to
for
have
sure.
entered.
And here it is right here. I mean, on a half-hour time frame, I mean, you can see like just sat here and you're like, wow, am I in this? Is this the right spot, or like is this thing going to go or not? And we kind of had this day here, the prior day, as we were all short from 80 right here, and we were
Hmm.
taking it down. But look how long we sat here. I mean, this is a half-hour chart, dude.
Oh, that was like
I remember telling my
2, 3 hours
girl if I
just
had to
sitting
short
there.
for 4 hours. I was short, and that's a long time for a
That's a
day
long
trade.
time.
Right? Like, oh my God, it's short since 10 a.m. So,
Yeah. You really
anyway,
have to have a conviction in your process to know
dude,
that, like, I could sit through this because it was a lesson in pain.
for sure. And then, so like when we had this that day, and then we started doing it again here, like I remember I went to lunch. I was like, I'm out of here. This is dumb.
Hmm.
Right. And then, they got all and I came
And
back.
then it just started picking
I
up
came back
speed.
just in time to buy it. so, anyways, with that being said, we won't go any further with that. But yeah, I mean, this is just a long, these moves. I mean, look at this for this roll over here. 1, 2, 3, 4 hours before it fell just to pop back up. For those of you who are around, we were pretty happy that we took the short at 80, and then we were able to turn right around and catch the flip at 50. And obviously, the target here was new highs. Again, once again, we got the new highs, but I didn't hold long enough. I mean, I'm proud of myself for catching 30 points, but man, one of these days, I would love to get the full shebang. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like,
the full
give me all
Lincoln.
60. I don't know. I just I set my target and I walk away. So once it gets it, I'm like, all right, I'll wait for the next one. But tis life. So let's talk about something that you and I were bullshitting about yesterday, which I personally think is kind of interesting. And again, it's a little bit of macro view ish, which you and I don't really care about, but we talked about it, just as for giggles. We talked about those jobs numbers.
Oh
So
yeah.
let's just chat about that, because you brought some really interesting stuff to my attention. I there's some guys in our room. For those of you guys who we have a trading Discord, and we have a course, and so everybody who are course holders, it's exclusive to course holders, is in this room. And we have a couple big players, guys that work at hedge funds, and so I reached out to them and I said, hey, man, are these jobs numbers, like, what are they saying at work, right? Because they blew jobs numbers out of the water. They expected 213,000 new jobs, I think it was, and they did 303,000. I mean, it
Right.
was like, I'm like,
There are
how?
only like an yeah.
Where are these jobs, right?
Like
So
any other
again, I try
analyst, if
not to get
that's their
too
job, if they
yes, like I
get
don't. I
fired.
try to get focused on that, like especially during the trading day, because then I make rash decisions based on nonsense.
Yeah.
But after you and I were able to sit back and kind of have a cocktail and chat about it, you brought some really good stuff to my attention. So I would love it if you would share it with these people, like kind of what you were thinking. And are the jobs numbers based off of immigration? Like, are they giving these immigrants like lawn keeper jobs or something? Like, where? How are these numbers? Are they inflated, or are they really blowing these out of the water? I mean, please, like, tell me your thoughts on this, because for me, the whole thing is fucking a joke. So
Yeah, yeah. No, so I think the jobs numbers, there's a lot of estimations that go into the models to calculate um, these jobs numbers. And so they are super squishy, which is why next month they're going to revise them up or down, usually probably down to get in more line in expectation. So I always, like, we don't look at the news in terms of, which way is it going to go, but as a volatility catalyst, which is going to
Right.
cause the thing to push around and move a little bit more. But then when we started to dig underneath, like, because this was a pretty big miss, like if you were an analyst and your job was to do this and you were, $100,000, 100,000 people off of a 300,000 person number, that's pretty big. That's a pretty big, like,
Yeah.
that's a pretty big miss, which is why we had that, big move to the upside, because it was a bigger number than they expected.
Right.
Anyway, there's a couple interesting things that were there. Mostly that the unemployment rate was, we talk about having a pretty low unemployment rate in the States of around, 3.9,
Underemployed. Yeah.
4.3%. Yeah. So basically the idea is, well, anyone who wants a job can have a job. But one of the things I was also looking
I
at,
don't believe that though. I think that's horseshit. I don't
right.
know. I
One of
think
the other numbers that they don't advertise so much, but it's baked into these reports, is how many people want to be in the workforce but are not participating in the
yeah,
workforce.
let
That's
me
the non-participation rate.
can you show that?
I will find it.
One of the things while you're finding that, let me show this too. This is wild to me, right? So this was actually I watched the video of there was like a I don't know, there was some video that went with this where they were talking about these numbers. And the part that really blew me away was wage growth is up 4.1% in the past year, and inflation is 3.2%. So they're essentially, they were all proud of themselves saying, well, hey, wage growth is outpacing inflation. So people are making money, right? So I, I mean, again, I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if I mean, is this election year nonsense? Because have these people been to the grocery store lately? Like, have they filled up their tank? Like,
Yeah,
my utilities are through the roof. Like, we know, interest rates are up, which is funny because we're old enough to remember 2008. This was normal interest rate. Like, this was just normal, right?
right.
But because we've seen 0%, now this seems high for everybody. But with that being said, I guess, I mean, this whole thing to me just, dude, everywhere I go, everything costs more money.
Everything was much expensive.
Everything. There's like,
So
and
here's one of the things that's misleading about, like, the interest rate numbers is, you've now been the frog in the boiling pan of water now for over a year. So they've raised, and now inflation is flattening, but you still had that, 18 months, 2 years of
right.
increase, and they haven't gone down. So you have sort of a new normal of $20 for a pack of bacon or whatever. So
Yeah, it's
even though
crazy.
inflation hasn't contracted or anything, like, it's still
It's
there.
transitory.
It's just flattened out a bit. So it's still going to be expensive, and it's still the visual sting of seeing those prices. Like, I think my little local grocery store still, like, eggs have gone down in price slightly, but they're still like $8 for a dozen or something ridiculous. Eight.
$8
Yeah, it's crazy.
golden eggs.
Yeah, golden eggs. Exactly.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's still pretty
I think
expensive.
mine are like 4.50 or 5, but I buy the cheap shit. I don't like.
The organic,
Oh,
free
that's why.
range.
Dude, I had to break my girl. She wanted to buy organic eggs and organic milk, and I said, "Listen, we're gonna die either way. Like, these organic eggs aren't gonna keep us around."
Okay, this is totally off topic here, but if you do buy organic, the things that you should buy that are organic are like oats and rice.
Okay.
And the reason for that is they utilize a lot of water when they're in production or even post production,
Okay.
and they're starting to phase it out in the U.S. But they used to use different chemicals to dry out the wheat just before they were harvested, and so you would have, like, incredible high concentrations of chemicals and weed killer in,
Okay.
like, oats.
That
The
makes
other
sense.
thing is fruits and vegetables that have a lot of water in them. So things like
Okay.
blueberries, bananas, things like that. Those are the things you kind of, if you're going to pick and choose which to buy organic, that's kind of the rules I use.
I got you.
Yeah.
so
How about that for my
I'll keep that
random
in mind
knowledge?
next time I'm at the grocery store. Let me share this. So you sent me this to share. Let me turn this on for you. Okay, boom.
So you
So
can
this is
see
what
this
I
is
found
the
super interesting.
so right. So obviously in 2020 we had COVID, so people who a lot of people were left without work. But you can see even though the participation rate is increasing, it's still only at 62%, which means 38% of people who are able-bodied in the United States still aren't working. And so you have a
Let's clarify this real quick, Rob. I don't mean to cut you off,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
I had, for whatever reason, I had not ever taken this number into account. And we had started talking about how the jobs unemployment rate was at 3.8%. I said, I don't see how. And you said, well, there's a metric that nobody ever touches on. And so can you again, and I know that you were kind of just getting into it, but
Yeah, yeah.
lay it down in layman's terms exactly what this number is for people. I mean, these are people who can work who choose not to, right? Or
That's how they're classified. They're
okay,
people who they don't have a disability, and they're of working age, and they're educated, and they just choose not to work. Essentially, that's how the Department of Statistics thinks about it.
and I guess
And
who would these people be? Is this like people on welfare, or is this like my son who's kind of
it
in
could
college but not really, but
So
decides he
my
wants to move
understanding is that
out?
it's not people that are sort of in college because they're active. But if
Okay,
you're not in college, you could be a stay-at-home mom. You would be counted in this number. You could be
okay,
someone who just chooses not to work. You could be a person who, we've got a fair amount of people, even Gen Xers and younger, who are moving back at home with their parents because they can't find jobs. And so after a period of time, they drift into this non-participating workforce. And it's a really big drag on the economy. You really want this number is higher because that means that people are participating and contributing to the economy. And so when you have 38% of people that are quote choosing not to work, that does bring things down and does bring down the economy. So it is on the uprise, which is a good thing. And part of that really big 100,000 people miss was supposedly people coming out of this um, workforce that were not employed and are finding employment, but it's still really low. I mean, to think that 38% of people aren't working
that's
is much
crazy.
higher than you would assume.
So are you and I in that category?
They haven't polled us yet, but yeah, I'm sure we are. Right,
So
I fit squarely in there.
yeah, I mean, listen, I don't claim to know about this because I don't really care. I mean, it's not up for debate that you're way smarter than me in these departments.
Mhm.
So can you explain to me where do they get the 3.8 versus and then how do you get the 3.8 and then how do you say, I mean, I guess where does this number come in? Why does this number never come into play
No,
and 3.8 does? I don't understand why,
so the unemployment rate, think about it like if you've lost your job and you're still receiving unemployment for
okay,
90 days or whatever. This is those people that are beyond 90 days. Like this is
okay,
the people that are not receiving unemployment and are not working.
okay.
And so a lot of people talk about the unemployment rate, and it is an important number. But I think this one is far a bigger deal because this one you have a lot more people to move the needle in terms of growing, economic value.
So I guess again, and pardon my ignorance here. So where does the 3.8 actually come from? Like what group is it based off of?
I think it's everyone that's receiving unemployment checks, essentially, or
Oh,
recently unemployed.
I got you. Interesting. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, this is a very interesting statistic. When you showed this to me, I'm like, so because you're like, well, it's not really 3.8%. It's more like 40%. I'm like,
It's more like 40% because you take 38 and then add the unemployment people of 3.9 or whatever. You're at
that's
40%.
that's insane.
It's insane, right? Like it's a
It's
much
insane.
bigger number than people think.
Yeah, but they're always talking about, the workforce is crazy strong, and, people
Yeah,
are
yeah,
printing
yeah.
money, and then, wages are higher than inflation. And then you look at this and you're like, hang on a second.
Yeah,
So
it basically means for every, almost for every person working, someone else is supporting them, you know?
that's crazy.
It's crazy, right? Like it's a
That
big
is crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a tough nut to swallow, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that pretty much, sums up the week, man. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm excited for next week. I think we've got a decent week of news and stuff ahead of us now that non-farm payrolls is behind us. We won't have as big a shocks. Um, I assume we're going to have more, rate discussions and things like that. But yeah, overall, it's pretty good.
well, just because we got a few minutes left, we got 5 minutes essentially before we cut this off. I do want to kind of talk about rates real quick, just because they've been on
Hmm.
everyone's mind, especially with me being a new homeowner, and et cetera, et cetera. And it really has a lot to do with us continuing to surf these all-time highs as we have been. We've got oil that's really kind of going bananas, and then we've got a lot of commodity pressures that are really, I think, going to work against the indices. But the rates themselves, for me, it was never like the last rate change that
Hmm.
ever happened. It was never about, are they going to raise or lower rates. For me, it was more about how many times are they expected to cut rates this year, right?
Right.
And so they, it was kind of always, not always, but they were saying four. They're going to cut rates 4 times this year, 4 times this year, 4 times this year, and then they announced that we're going to cut rates only twice this year, and the market was still happy. They blasted off, and here we go. And then again, now we're back to what they talked about, the Fed speak on Thursday, where they said, you know what, these numbers are not really what we thought
We're
they
not.
were going to be, right? So
Yeah,
maybe we're not going to cut rates at all. Maybe we're going to raise rates, or again, I think with
or
an
just hold
election
them.
year,
Yeah,
I don't think they raise rates. I really don't. I,
I
I
don't think so
honestly
either.
believe that this is all a tactic
It's
to keep,
really hard to raise rates when the market is,
dude.
yeah,
Like, first off, Powell, Trump already said, Powell, you're not going to stay in office, right? He's going to let him go,
hmm,
right? And if Biden gets out of there, if Biden stays, he'll keep Powell. But if not, he's gone. So it kind of, there's going to be a regime change. So for me, I kind of feel like a lot of this, they're gonna play the game until after the election to kind of keep this market, essentially going. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Does that make
for
sense?
sure.
So I just, the rate thing is just strange to me. I mean, so I guess the next move here is, and you started talking about inflation earlier. They raised rates so fast, and we needed that, right?
Right.
Because
They should have
inflation,
raised rates earlier, basically, is why they had to
they
raise
should
so
have. And
fast.
I don't think we're ready for a rate cut. I mean, in all honesty, they could go higher. Like,
Yeah.
and we kind of need it to go higher. And I'm not saying that it would be great for everyone's pockets and jobs and all that, but this shit is out of
No, that's
control.
the idea is you raise rates to lower everything to get inflation really in check. So,
Yeah, I could totally see 1970s, 80s. Like, I remember
mhm.
growing up, my parents had a 15% mortgage. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
of
isn't that
course, the
crazy?
house was 70,000, so it was a little
Yeah.
different story, right? But, I mean, something's got to give, anyways. Right?
Exactly.
Something's got to give. Well, I don't know. You got anything else, Rob? I thought this was a great
Yeah.
first run.
I think everyone needs to keep an eye out for April 10th. We've got CPI numbers. That's going to be the big one.
Nice.
We also
The 10th.
got the eclipse on April 8th,
That's
so maybe
right.
people will go outside and look in the sun. So maybe price won't be moving as much that
Dude,
there.
I
But
hear that like this is a big deal. My mom is in Indiana, and she said every Airbnb, every hotel,
everybody's
everything is completely booked. You can't. Aggie's brother just asked if he could rent our house in Indiana for him and his family. I'm not shitting you, to go down and watch. like, is this really like this is a just to watch the sun go out? Like, just
sure,
come
man.
out.
We'll give you a total deal. It's $3,000 a night. It's not.
That's right.
I'm hooking you up.
Can't. Whatever. Anyway, yeah, you're right. The eclipse, is that going to be during the day?
Yes, it's
Okay. Well, I
around.
get duh. That's thanks, Rob.
What's your
Thanks for not
favorite
making me feel
planet?
like a complete
Mine's the
asshole.
sun. Yeah, no,
Right.
it's gonna be good.
And you said CPI was on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Is that the only ballbuster news event we have? If you don't know, it's okay. I was just
Yeah,
curious.
no, we've got CPI the day after.
What is it?
The price producer index, so that's
CPI?
the inflation, and
So
also
Wednesday,
initial
Thursday are
job.
going to be juking too, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then Friday's Michigan sentiment, which can or cannot do anything.
All right.
Oftentimes it doesn't do much.
Yeah, I agree. So this was fun. I would love to continue to do this with you. I'm going to put some feelers out there and see if we can get a few other
Oh yeah,
people
I'd love to get some
to
people on
join
board.
the banter, the rigmarole. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much,
All
and
right, thank you.
I'll see you on the battlefield on Monday. So
All right. Catch you on Monday.
yeah, everyone else, we'll see you next week. Stay tuned and cheers.
See ya.